What's up, free world? Welcome to another episode of The Side Eye. I am Uptown Bobby,
And I'm K Clark.
and we are back once again, basically wrapping up the summer, wrapping up September. Today's date is September 22nd. What a month! What a month! And we are back to basically not do a breakdown on the month or the summer necessarily, but just talk about some past news headlines that kind of all tie in together. Um, like the name of this episode is
Oh well,
based off.
first a quick rest in power to Frankie Beverly and
Oh yeah,
J
yeah,
James Earl Jones.
yeah. Oh
Well,
boy,
not
niggas.
a controversial for some remote some
Yeah, I
but
didn't know all that shit about the nigga, but
yeah, but
any nigga 90 years old, I would low key think they felt like that too. So, nevertheless,
um
rest in peace to the light skinned man who voiced so many iconic characters. Um,
yes,
yeah,
Mufasa,
Mufasa,
yes,
Darth Vader. Yeah, but
yes,
timeless Frankie Beverly.
yes, the soundtrack to many a cookout. Because even when he passed, I knew. Of course, I knew before I let go. I knew some, and I thought, well, I kind of know the music, but I'm not really sure. But then when I was when he had the post of tributes on like Instagram and things like that, now it's probably through different slides. Like, oh, I know that song. Oh, I know that song. I've heard that song. It's just like it. You forget. You I don't say forget, but you don't realize. I didn't realize how much that sort of permeates so many memories of like just you know obviously cookouts and social gatherings and events and things like that. It's like the soundtrack of things. Like it had like a wave of memories that came back, or like that's a feeling of like a
Hmm.
certain period, which will but hopefully it's what music you hope your music does. So so
Right. I just hate I never got to see him because I took advantage of him always being around.
mm,
Like Frankie Beverly would always come around. I want to say like the last 10 years, it felt like he was always on tour around like summertime, from summer to like fall, they would be on tour. And always a staple at Essence, a staple in New Orleans.
mhm.
Just always, but even because like we all knew Frankie was close to the end. You saw his physical appearance starting to decline, and him still wanting to perform. I'm pretty sure this last tour might have been like people in his camp telling him, Frankie, just it's all right, sit out. But he loved performing so much, and he loved doing what he doing that he did it to the very end. Frankie just got off tour. Like I think I
Mhm.
was I was thinking about going to go see him. I think it was a Dallas show I was pondering a few months ago this year. So rest in peace to Frankie Beverly. Great musician, timeless. Happy People has always would have been one of my favorite songs. And yeah, just another great gone, but will always be remembered and will live on through their music.
Mhm. Definitely.
Speaking of transitions, this transition into what seems like a continuation of the Me Too movement, but also just chickens coming home to roost. I feel like it's been a year that I hate to say
Mm.
Cat Williams was a prophet. I'm not gonna say that, but
Well,
the
I get to him and Jaguar after we get to the initial stuff. So
but the things he alluded to, things coming to light, so much stuff happened this year. Watching the fall of Diddy and then the jabs Drake took just all seems so interesting. And also, I don't know, divine to happen all within the same year. It's also interesting that Kendrick Lamar, after he, had his victory lap throughout the summer, not only does he get the Super Bowl halftime show, which is now a bigger thing than I ever thought was, I always knew it. It's always been a big thing to get the Super Bowl halftime because all the hype and the viewers and the ratings. But this one was so political, industry wise, because of the venue and then the artist chosen versus the artist people might have thought chosen.
yeah.
Uh, with Kendrick Lamar being chosen over Little Wayne. Did you have any thoughts about that initially?
By Lil Wayne not being chosen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess I feel like a lot of us are at least based in Louisiana, Mississippi, maybe even Texas area in the South. I feel like a lot of us are thinking with our Louisiana glasses or Southern glasses, or that mindset rather than thinking of the wider mindset of what's uh, the NFL's thinking with. You know, if this were 2008, 2009, even 2010. Because 2010 is even tricky because by that point these were kind of shifting away from rap more back to pop in terms of like the center of pop music. But if that period, if Wayne was chosen to do the Super Bowl, then yes, because '08 is like Carter 3 and Lollipop and a Millie and the peak of all of like the build up, because you had the mixtape build up from like 04 through like '07, and '08 was like Carter 3 was like now he's the biggest rap star on the planet, basically. And then '09, even a continuation because, he had formed Young Money and then he signed, of course, signed Drake and Nicki. He was still at the top in terms of like not just amongst the hardcore base, but also the mainstream. But Wayne in 2024, yeah, he can still sell a arena, but it's to his fans. Not necessarily, he doesn't necessarily have the presence in popular culture and a career momentum to play the Super Bowl, and and a lot of people saying Western New Orleans, it should have been in New Orleans. Well, I mean, that's not really, it really has been the case historically. I mean, when they were in Detroit, Diana Ross wasn't playing. She headlined in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
When they were in
Yeah.
Indiana, when they were playing in Indiana, Mike wasn't there.
Hmm.
Princeton headline when they were in Minnesota, Minneapolis. The thing with Dre and Snoop, in 2022 was really an exception more than the rule. And even that, you got 50 Cent
Mm-hmm.
from New York, Mary J. Blige from New York, you got Eminem from
Eminem.
Detroit. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even that didn't fully line up. So, and then Beyonce performed there in 2013 in New Orleans, and I don't remember the same uproar, about it. So, I honestly I can understand the frustration, I guess, of like, people come to New Orleans and not have a New Orleans artist be the headliner, but Wayne in 2024 is not Wayne in 2008. Time and lean has taken its toll. You know, no, you got. I mean, it's not to it's not a minute as an insult, but I mean, he's not physically it's taking its toll. You know, the lean and the drug use it has. You can tell. Can he make it through
Yeah.
a 12, 15-minute performance in the Super Bowl? Does he have enough energy? Because Ronald can like give you no energy, but it's like no energy like us, like like a yes mama type of no energy. Lil Wayne got the type of energy, you know. And
Right.
so I just don't see it.
Yeah. I mean, I really didn't have any feelings about it. Honestly, I didn't think he would be picked anyway, New
And
Orleans or not. Um, like Wayne didn't do a good job of protecting his legacy, and it wasn't all his fault. He had the drug problems, he had the legal battles, he had a lot of stuff once his decline started. The jail time, just the rise of Drake. It was just a lot of things that just took away, that just chipped away from his legacy to
mm,
make him a legacy act, probably before he was really ready to be a legacy act. And it happens. I don't really, I wasn't finna sympathize for a millionaire who sold out an arena tour, not arena tour, but an arena festival, with his Hot Boy reunion, because he has a festival in Louisiana that's happening in November, and it's sold out. So he's doing well. It's not like he's on food stamps or nothing. People make it seem like he just distraught. I mean, maybe he felt like he deserved it, but life happens. And then Kendrick had one of the best years an artist has had, particularly a rapper. Um, it was just fitting. And then he's a better performer.
mm-hmm,
If you watch the Amazon recording of the tour he had in France and Paris, the Paris show,
mm-hmm.
it's just something very impressive to see from a rapper.
Mm.
So if any rapper were to get on the biggest stage,
Particularly a male rapper.
right? So for any rapper to get that honor and this decade, this generation, it should be Kendrick. Wayne will be fine. He has a tour probably coming with maybe his hot boy brethren if they can act right for that one show. And yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be okay. I didn't want to see that shit. And I'm pretty sure most people who were thinking with their emotions, like you stated earlier, they probably won't want to sit through that shit because it's not gonna be pretty. It's not gonna look good. He's just gonna be up there shirtless, rambling, and looking sickly.
Oh yeah, and like I said, I guess yeah. As far as like I said, like that, just the time is sort of taking its toll. As far as like, I mean, even like you could say, because I mean, I don't remember, let's say, how Wayne was as a performer back in like his peak, but I would imagine it was more high energy than what he could give at this current moment, you know. And so, and again, career momentum, what's Wayne's current release? How is that done as far as like a main, as far as as far as a mainstream conversation? Yeah, Wayne is obviously a legend and influential in rap. Even on Kendrick has said he's a Wayne fan. Wayne has been an influence. But in terms of like the current conversation, are people talking about Wayne the same way they're talking about Kendrick? No, they just aren't. That's not like a slight, but it's just the truth. Had this been 2014 and somebody said Kendrick gonna headline, I'll be like, I don't know about that, because that by that point only been one album in the mainstream that was successful, but not on the level that he's like in the center. Like the Super Bowl is a center. Like the person that watches the Super Bowl is not a hardcore Lil Wayne fan. The person watching the Super Bowl is like, yo, who is this person? Oh, they got that one song I danced to back in high school. Oh, all right, okay, I'm gonna watch. That's a Super Bowl fan. That's not a hardcore music fan that knows all the mixtape dedication, Lil Wayne tracks, you know. And people need to think about that too. Like they're aiming for the widest possible net of people to watch,
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. So,
and also you can argue the whole thing about, because they got the whole host-up theory about, about how they don't want Lil Wayne and Nicki to inject to perform or whatever. Who, why? Who are they, like dead prayers? Like these aren't, they're gonna shake up the system if they perform. It's already, I mean, really, you could throw up a little side towards Kendrick for doing it, given his stance about, about wanting to, purify the culture, so to speak, but I guess we passed kneeling. So
so that's a great segue into next topic, which was Kendrick Lamar's I'm not gonna call it a single. Honestly, reminded me of the songs that fit his Heart series. I don't even think it had a proper title. I don't know if it has a title.
I think it was Watch the Party Die, whatever. It was like this. I think it's the official title, I believe, or like the
maybe
official, unofficial title.
Yeah, because it's not on streaming platforms.
Right.
I think you can only listen to it on. I'm pretty sure there's a rip of it on YouTube, but it was only released on his social media stuff. So Kendrick Lamar released a song following the Super Bowl halftime announcement, tentatively titled possibly "Watch the Party Die," and it's more so a continuation of his crusade to, I think, maybe cleanse the industry, or just maybe more reflection on some of the things that he did this past summer regarding Drake, but more so it's going not just about Drake, but more so about the whole industry and it needing maybe a restored period, like a reset button. And sometimes Kendrick could be a bit self-righteous, but also with this, it felt like he was genuinely wanting to see change in an industry that he's probably had problems with for a while, because he's always been a bit standoffish with his peers. Not necessarily being like very collaborative or always out and about, very someone in his own little bubble. Mostly with his label mates. It's probably the most participation you see from Kendrick Lamar when it comes to like industry things. So it was an interesting song to listen to. But like I said, sometimes he does come off a bit self-righteous. I do. I know his fans push back on this, but I do think he is a Hebrew Israelite. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's a very
It's some hotepery, but not. But it's
yeah.
less the Umar Jackson treat Nasheed variety and more like a general
Wake up, brother
yeah,
type vibe to it,
yeah.
because in the song he just talks about wanting to burn everything down and what type of man he is and the type of values he has, and sometimes it's cool, but sometimes it's a little grandstanding too, because it's like, yeah, nigga, but okay, so yeah, you're not, going to the parties, doing the drugs and fucking the bitches or fucking whoever, but you also like money too. So it's like, but I mean, you're getting it
Mm.
the way you should get it by not maybe like blackballing people or blacklisting people or like, doing like things that stunt artists, but you also are very capitalistic and, you know,
Well,
you have your shit about you too. But
it's also like like you said, so the pushback against the materialism, or like talking about take off the design clothes, but you perform at a Louis Vuitton fashion show,
right, with that
or
with that with that iced out crown of thorns.
right, or you going on about Drake and how he mistreats women, specifically black women, but then one of your mentors is Dr. Dre, who's widely known as an abuser, you know. Uh, will he hold him to the same standard he holds Drake to? I know that's
No.
a different dynamic because of the, like you said, the mentor or the influence that he's having in his career. But it's like if you really on a mission to hold people accountable, even getting back to Cat Williams, people we're talking about him, people saying, he a prophet or whatever. And talking about abusers, I mean, he go hang with Suge Knight, allegedly, who was allegedly abusive towards Michelle A. So it's just like that. It's like obviously. I mean, people probably will push back and say, "Well, the message doesn't have to be perfect." Which okay, the message doesn't have to be perfect, but also I think they have to be willing to look at their own blind spots at least. You're getting down Jaguar white people. Someone's like, "Oh, we owe her an apology." I saw some post about it on Facebook. Like, we do not owe that woman an apology. That what she did. I I call her. It's a little bit cold, but I will say she was very savvy in the sense that she knew she was she brought up things about specifically about Diddy that people were already we're gonna get into in a minute that people already were talking about. She has brought to the surface and talked about it more, and people
And did it in a very blunt way.
right and people took it as more legitimate because she is or was in the industry, and so they're gonna take her, her
Commentary.
her commentary is more legit than the average person. But beyond that, it's like, and she present, and present her, or she presents herself like it's like a truth teller, like an advocate or whatever. But it's like, I mean, are you really advocate when most of your talk beyond Diddy is like, oh well, Jill Scott, she got flawed choices with her men, and she do this, that, and third. Or Mary J. Blige, she may be a lesbian, she got like dysfunctional relationships or whatever. It's like, okay, or Megan Thee Stallion and Nicki Minaj had a sex tape together. It's like, okay, well, 90% of what she was saying beyond Diddy was like, well, the reaction could be like, well, girl, what you want us to do about it? I mean, you know what I mean? It's like he's like,
Right. And then
you advocate for women, but it's like but at the same time, you tearing down any woman that doesn't live up to your conservative patriarchal notions of what it means to be a woman. You know, prime hope
right.
10%, along with the casual homophobia towards Diddy, called him honeycomb and everything else. Like, I know, I recognize that mess. I don't hear it, and I know other gay folks here too, black gay folks here too. We hear, we see you, girl. What happened to the Malik B documentary? That's what it's supposed to start. That's what it's supposed to talk about back in 2020. What happened to honor Malik B? That's what she said it was about.
Right. And then it's just an example of a broken clock being right 2 times a
Mm-hmm.
day. You know.
A savvy broken clock, basically.
Exactly. Um, so yeah, I guess we go to the elephant in the room, which is the P. Diddy allegations have finally reached their peak, and now P. Diddy is behind bars. He is facing charges everything from racketeering to sex trafficking to
Arson.
just arson. Yeah, just the whole gamut of allegations. Um, you could tell that this was pretty much the beginning of the end when the Cassie case broke forward first, which was pretty bad on his part, but uh he did his due diligence and he paid the money, and like the same day or the next day.
Well, he did it after she decided to move forward with the lawsuit. Because at first she said, I, she brought forward her claims and said, I want this. I think it was said she wants a certain amount of money. I think around 8 figures, I believe, or whatever it was. And basically, he or his lawyers turned her down and said no. And then she moved forward with her case. And then that's when the settlement was paid the next day, you know, originally.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So things escalated after that because another lawsuit came from a producer who worked on the album, the Love Underground,
I
Love
think
Off the Grid album.
whatever his last release was.
Yeah, his last album, Love Off the Grid, which, God, it was not a bad album. But typically, what it was P. Diddy basically just doing what he always does. He collects a group of musicians and talented artists, and they pretty much just make him look good. It's kind of almost like the DJ Khaled effect. They make him look good, and he gets all the credit. So the Love album Off the Grid, which dropped last year, had a producer, Rodney Little Rod Jones, on it, and Little Rod Jones made headlines in February when he filed a $30 million sexual assault, trafficking, and racketeering lawsuit against Diddy. Now, this is the lawsuit that pretty much led to the discourse we have now about P. Diddy's actions behind the scenes, but also his sexuality. And because in the lawsuit, the producer, Rodney Jones, Lil Rod, makes allegations that P. Diddy not only assaulted him sexually, but also performed lewd sexual acts in front of him, recorded them, had sexual advances toward other people in the industry, naming Meek Mill, Usher, other artists, of course, Stevie,
Stevie J.
what's the guy from Stevie
Stevie J.
J, and also Carisha, the city girl. So that led to the discourse. People kind of glossed over all the horrible thing, but it just led to discourse revolving around P. Diddy's sexuality and his infamous parties. And it was pretty odd to see that people not ignore the things in the lawsuit, like the violence and the sexual, I don't want to say the sex acts, but the deviance of them, and also the way he moved with intimidating people. But it also just became a running joke about P. Diddy being bi and wanting to have sex with like every male artist pretty much in the industry or something like that. So move forward beyond that lawsuit, actual footage of Cassie being assaulted by P. Diddy, and I think this footage was taken from what, the late tens, like 2018.
I think like 2016, I believe.
Yeah, 2016. It was a hotel lobby hallway, and P. Diddy is running what seems to be out of a room wearing only a towel, and he assaults Cassie, vicious assault. He's kicking her, he's like pushing her down, just brutal. And this is public, and this is after he's, once the Little Rod loss, once the Cassie lawsuit happened and he paid the money, he was pretty much moving like, I don't have nothing on me, people are trying to bring me down, I'm the victim, da 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 da. Then the Little Rod lawsuit happens, he kind of like goes ghost basically. doesn't really post much, doesn't really say much, has like his legal team make statements. But when the Cassie footage comes, we get a video of him apologizing, talking about he was going through a dark time, he was in a dark place, the typical stuff that celebrities do.
Mhm.
At this point, did you think he stood a chance at trying to redeem his image or like avoiding what ended up happening now?
Mm, at that point, I thought, as far as like his wider, like mainstream sort of appeal, like that he still was kind of enjoying. I thought that was kind of a wrap. Like, I still feel like they probably would have gotten some embrace or some acceptance amongst us as far as like black community, or some of us in the black community. Some of us would have written them off. But in the same way that people would still go up for Chris Brown, so that, I think people still would have been like, still would have like been a fan of Diddy, or still would have aspired to be like Diddy in a way. So it definitely was a major uh, uh, blow to his image and to his brand, basically. Because I think after that he like sold his stake in Revolt, I believe, and some sponsorships of things went away, or some business deals went away after that. But I think he still would have been able to sort of maintain somehow like a lesser capacity than he had before, after the
Mhm.
video. So, but then of course, the raid happened at his Miami home, I think in New York, in his home in New York, I believe. And then they also had Don Richard recently from the group Dandy Kane, and also the group Dirty Money, came up with a lawsuit where she alleges that, similar things to Cassie, physical abuse, emotional abuse, also, he claims there was an incident, I think in maybe in the late aughts, maybe, at some time where I believe, I think the suit says it was a woman. I think it likely it may have been Cassie, allegedly was assaulted at a party in the presence of allegedly Usher and Neo, and nobody did anything when the abuse was going on. So there's that as well. So I think before he maybe had a chance to sort of just be like a smaller, very problematic, but sort of like, marginally successful or visible person. And this point, it's a wrap. I mean, I think.
Yeah, now with him being actually behind bars and uh the bail being that ridiculous, I think he is the bail like ridiculously high. He's no bail.
It's 50 million, which, I mean, I wouldn't say, for given who the client is, who the defendant is, I wouldn't say it's ridiculously high. I mean, he had to give his mama a house of his collateral, and I think a few other things as well. I mean, I don't think he's as rich as he projects himself to be, but he still got money. He still got,
Right.
fly away and never come back money. So 50 million to me makes sense.
Right. And also, he has his um just a slew of allegations, like just things that really, really hold weight in a sense after you like look at all the evidence that's gathered. But the most jarring thing about this is the public reception that it's just jokes. It's basically just jokes about his
Baby oil
sexuality and baby oil. And how do you feel about the response towards the public with everything going on and it pretty much being reduced to the two things we just said?
and I mean, it's not surprising. It was already happening before,
Hmm.
with the whole no Diddy, and talking about TD Jakes being at certain parties and things like
Oh
that.
yeah.
So I mean, it's a continuation of that. I mean, people are memeing, people are memeing anything. So this isn't, I mean, the thing, if just bring the 2024 presidential race into it, people can meme about, you know Haitians eating the dogs, as the former president said in the debate, which is not true. People can make a meme out of that, and they can, and two presidential candidates can spread that story out, and people just meme the shit out of that. They can meme this as well, you know. And I think guess to be less blunt about it, I get, if you read the indictment, the 14-page indictment, I mean, it's some very disturbing details. They basically say he ran a criminal sex ring, basically, where he would lure people in and force them to have days long, what he called freak offs with commercial sex workers who he would fly out basically, or travel across state lines, which is another charge for prostitution, which I don't think that should be illegal, but he basically have rent out whole floors of hotel rooms and have these freak offs that will last for days at a time and force people to have sex under the influence of drugs, supply them with drugs, basically give them drugs without their knowledge. And then for his own amusement or pleasure, whatever. And then there'll also be violence, hitting, choking, dragging people by their hair, the verbal abuse, psychological abuse, threatening career opportunities, people who tried to run away, for people saying why she didn't run away. Well, people who tried to run away, he had a whole team of people, or had a whole village that would basically follow the person or try to bring them back into the fold if they tried to get away. And of course you got the arson with Kid Cudi allegedly, where his car got blown up while he was seeing Cassie for a brief period. So, those are very disturbing details, and they raise a lot of questions like, how could this man who has presented himself as one way in public be so monstrous in private, and how could it go on for so long? And the same questions that were raised for R. Kelly, basically, and rather than having to really dig into that and face that and get into the why of it all, it's much easier to focus on the baby oil and the lube and and the parties and you got to tell them no, and how it's easier to focus on the more minimal salacious details rather than the abuse and the dark side of things.
Right. Yeah, it's just been just a joke session, really, when some really heinous things happen.
Because really, I mean, there's Diddy's in both across the land, across the world. It's just that they don't have access to money and power and connections to establish a whole ring of people that can support their abuse. They just got themselves, being creeps, individual creeps.
Right. And it's just a continuation of something that's been going on. I mean, pretty much since the dawn of time, but like in this celebrity era with this culture, it's been high-powered men who have too much money and too much time to spend, and they just do diabolical almost things with their resources, and they get away with it because they're part of a network that's even more powerful. And it's just a club, and he's been pretty much untouchable for so long, but the stories have been circulating since we've been children. I've heard jokes, I've heard things about his sexuality for a while, but the things about the parties and the business acumen have existed for a very long time, especially the business part. People talking about the dirty deals, the under the table stuff, the contracts from hell, the royalties, just continuing story after story about this man being a Machiavellian like businessman that really wants to just have you as his slave while he profits, and you pretty much just get fame, and then you end up broke or left off, like just really, really bad off.
Which kind of plays into the whole idea of like a figure like him, even a figure like Jay-Z with the NFL and things like that. It plays into like the toxicity of Black excellence, because that's what he presented, early on, but especially as he got further away from, say, like the 90s and so on. This image of like this guy from Harlem who's now this sort of suave, debonair businessman who has these elaborate white parties every year and has this whole cosmopolitan sort of image, and that was used and the success of his own individual success was used to downplay or ignore the exploitation, the rumors about violence or whatever things were going on between, let's say, him and Kim Porter, or potentially him and Misa, his other child, the mother of one of his other children. It was his image of him as black excellence was used to downplay its other stuff. Like, don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to individual success and aspire to that. And same what I would say with Russell, and same with, like I said, to an extent with Jay. That cover of black excellence has been used to sort of to mask all sorts of really horrible shit.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And we see it often, they're existing, but they're also just doing heinous things. And the excuse is they got money, but they're great. They look at, look what they do, Uh, they do this, they do that, they give back. And it's just like, do they really? And even if they do, the elephant in the room is they're deviants, sexually in the boardroom, in the community. P. Diddy, I mean, Wendy Williams probably shouldn't have done the thing she did about, outing him as, bi or gay or whatnot. But the thing he did in response was heinous, basically getting her out of a market and,
Yeah. And just to clarify real quickly, about when we say deviant, it's the distinction of like not deviant because he allegedly maybe attracted to both sexes, because obviously I don't consider that deviant, or either.
No. Yeah.
Either, but deviant in the sense that he's predatory, abusive, coercive, so on and
Right.
so forth.
Yeah. Sex trafficking,
Yeah, right.
manipulating,
Because
sexual assault.
Yeah, because I was watching I was watching a YouTuber named Funky Deneva, and he was saying, like, the things Diddy was doing for like the sex parties, you can do that consensually with somebody. It's not, he was, at least in his point of view, saying it's not hard to find people to do that stuff with consensually. Like, if you wanted to find a group of people that have swingers clubs or like group sex every week, and do it up, you know in that way he could have, but at some point, and maybe he did in the beginning, but at some point it turned into this other darker thing, you know.
Yeah, right. Sex parties and uh, those type of environments are prominent, right? And those things are fine if there are consensual adults there who are doing it safely and having fun. Cool, but it's the way that he went about it with sexual assault, um, basically kidnapping people, the sex trafficking. Like, it's a line between you know fun and just abuse, and he crossed a whole new territory with the abuse that's documented. And just the energy he always had about him. My father was kind of like a conspiracy theorist, but he had this conspiracy theory that Diddy not only was responsible for killing Tupac, but probably Biggie as well.
I've
And I
heard
always,
that, yeah.
yeah, and I always thought it was just barbershop talk. Like, oh, these niggas don't know what you're talking about. But if you look at the trajectory of his career after Biggie died, he became the star. He became the face. He got the I miss you R.I.P. hit of the life of a lifetime, and I'll be missing you. He started dropping all the albums. He went from being the guy in the videos that Suge Knight made fun of
Dancing.
yeah, dancing in the background, but to the spotlight, the star, the rapper, and it just fueled his ego. And then the Making the Band series, which just took it to a whole nother level of just debauchery, with how he treated those people. And so it's always been there. It just wasn't, I guess, enough tangible proof for the public, for the court of public opinion to really, get him out of there. But it was always there. It was always lingering that this dude was a maniacal asshole who was throwing parties that were borderline, ethical, and then, a horrible businessman to do work with because you would get fucked and he would get rich.
Yeah. Well, I think part of people look the other way because like I said about that black excellence, but also because that was that era. I think we mentioned this before. He came up in that era of like, Russell Simmons and Dame Dash and some other executives probably that where, the norm was to treat people like shit. And people look at it as like, oh, that's a boss move, be a boss. Like, that no, but it was large. Like he watched that, what was that film about about Rockefeller, Backstage, where you just see Dame Dash just going off on somebody, like, and everybody around is just like, oh, shit is Wednesday. That was the norm, that how people like moved and treated people, particularly men. But so and he's part of that. So or was part of that group that came up.
Right. That whole move fast to break stuff and
Mm-hmm.
I'm the fucking man and get as much money as you can, shit. And so many people, I hear people try to guess who's next, but I think that it's a little too late for that game because the cake already baked. Like people want to say Jay-Z's next, and it's like, is he though? Is he? Because like, but Diddy, for all his wrongdoing, like we just alluded to earlier, it's been somewhat of a track record. When Jay-Z has kind of moved silently,
He's less
but
flashy about it.
also way less flashy, maybe even smarter than the other people involved. Mary Beyonce certainly helped, and then even to come out, both of them, and announce that, yeah, it was a dark period where I was cheating, I was being unfaithful, and we almost lost everything. And then to spin it as this redemption narrative that now we good and we want to take over the world. So I'm not sure if he is next, or I honestly don't even care if he's next because like I just think it's kind of just a game of guess who or whatever people want to play. Everybody wants to be right. People want to say I told you so. And that's cool, that's fine. I get it, especially if it's true. But I'm just not I'm not entertained with playing that game right now because I really don't care at the moment, about if he is next or if he's whatever. Because I mean, what do I gain from it? I hope, if he has done heinous things, then I do hope they come to the light. But I'm more so saying I'm not just invested in playing some long term game of I've got you basically.
Yeah, I think with Jay, because really any sort of like narrative that has tried to stick to Jay is that uh there are instances of him being kind of asshole to his eyes. So like Maya talk about the thing with him doing the remix for Best of Me and him getting upset because she wasn't basically like praising him to come for doing a feature, and he ended up charging her a lot to do the feature. It's a story about from a I think a former, I can't think of the guy's name, but I think he's a rapper. I think he used to work with Jay-Z when Jay-Z was like on the come up, Rockefeller and everything else. And basically saying how Jay-Z was kind of manipulative and basically was trying to tell him not to write for Diddy. And then next thing you know, Jay-Z's writing for Diddy. And, and you got stories of like, of course, the thing with the Brooklyn Nets, where I think he like presented himself as being like a part owner, but he had like a very small stake. And then he basically like helped them gentrify Brooklyn and then ease off the deal. And of course you got the NFL where I alluded to that where he's saying like we came in. He was saying, I said no to the Super Bowl in ape shit. And then next thing you know, he sees sitting there with Roger Goodell saying we passed kneeling now, and presenting it as somehow like a sea change for like how the NFL will treat its players and how it will deal with like issues of race, when all we've really seen over the past 5 years is more black folks more black artists at the Super Bowl, which would be fine if that wasn't the only thing. Like I haven't seen anything else. I'm not aware of anything else. But I don't watch football, so I can't speak to what simply he's done as far as the NFL goes. But I haven't heard anything of note. So his moves have he's done some shady things as far as like to get to where he is, but he doesn't have like Diddy had like a whole roster of artists, like 112, Mace most famously, Faith to an extent, 112, the band, to an extent, Daddy Kane to an extent. They all had stories of how they basically just, didn't have anything, and never had anything in the deal. Allegedly, Biggie was trying to leave before he passed, and so that narrative really stuck with him. For a while, people kind of laughed. I was like, "Don't sound Diddy," you know what I mean? Like, people treat it as a joke, but it stuck. With Jay-Z, nothing has really stuck to him that could really bring him down. In a sense, like, I mean, there are whispers about how old Beyonce was exactly when they met. Both of them have steadfast said she was 20 when they got together. There have been rumors about people have tried to point to him and Foxy back in the day. So there's been things here and there that people have tried to attach him to, but other than him being kind of a shark in terms of business, that's the only thing that's really stuck. And people can probably here we dismiss that and say, well, okay, we suffer business, but that's how you got to be to get where he is. It fits into that whole, billionaire black excellence mess. So as far as like him being next, I mean, if there are secrets that heavy, like there's allegedly, the affair, there's allegedly an affair with Rihanna back in the day, that too. So if there are bodies, they are buried very deep.
Like dead at
yes.
this point.
Like not 6 feet, 12 feet.
Right. So it's just one of those things. Right. Where he's done a good job of covering his tracks, if there are tracks. And he's been a shady businessman as well. I remember when he was president of Def Jam and he had basically LL Cool J and Method Man irate with him about how he handled their albums during that period when he was the president.
You could tell LL don't like him. Like,
yeah, he don't like him.
You watch the Shannon Sharp interview where they had the whole thing about Shannon asked him like, who was your top 5 or your Mount Rushmore rap? I don't think he included Jay-Z. And like they had the whole thing of like, why include Jay-Z? He's like, I don't got, and then LL was like, I don't got a problem with. I'm just like, like, nigga, you got a problem with that man. You don't like that man.
Oh yeah,
but you,
it goes back.
You don't want to say it. You got a problem with that man. You don't like that nigga.
Right. Yeah, it goes back to that because I remember the time. I remember the news. The interviews then about how he felt his album wasn't being pushed or supported because Jay-Z was in charge and Jay-Z was trying to push basically people who left Rockefeller and came with him, or push younger acts that he wanted. Just basically push people he liked versus pushing older, legacy acts like LL at the time and Method Man. And it was a moment, it was just something. And then plus, he really didn't. They really didn't have confidence in him because they were like, "You're a rapper just like us. What do you know about being a president of a label? Especially Def Jam. They just felt like it was a lot of in-house cooking, especially when he kind of came back relatively soon and dropped his own album, with Kingdom Come. So it was like they were like, nigga, you just playing this game. Like it was a lot of politics involved. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is him being a shrewd businessman, people, like you said, people allude to him grooming Beyonce. Hey, we may never really know. She's not gonna say anything. Him and Rihanna, then him and the whole love rectangle with R. Kelly, Dame Dash, and Baby Jay-Z. I don't know. It's just a lot of speculation that doesn't really have much meat on the bone to really, go further and hang him publicly for the same things as Diddy and Russell Simmons and even Michael Jackson. And that's another name I always see people evade is Michael Jackson. And I don't know if it's because he's dead or because people just love the music so much, but Michael Jackson never got, in my opinion, the same amount of. I mean, the jokes were there, and maybe it was just a different time, but it was so easily forgiven or easily blame the parents or easily like that ain't true. he went through the legal process, but it was always in the court of public opinion, like grace and understanding, or just something that didn't make people want to really believe the allegations. And I never really understand it.
Well, I think even
And
compared.
it was kids. It was like little kids.
Yeah.
Like I'm not excusing what R. Kelly,
Oh yeah.
Diddy, or Russell Simmons did. They are all horrible people. But I think with Michael Jackson, what made it even more honestly sinister was that it was very young children, and he was so big and so famous, and then the aloofness of it, just like the Martin Bashir interview, where it was like, oh, we're just drinking wine, and oh, we're just sleeping in the same bed. Oh, well, it was like, what? Like it was, and
Yeah.
it's like,
I think with Michael, number one, I think because you have the trial and he was found not guilty, and there's like with the people that come forward, there's people are able to poke enough holes in their narrative to like to where it's not open and shut in the sense like it is with R. Kelly. I mean, R. Kelly is literally a tape. With Diddy, there's literally a tape. With R. Kelly, there's literally a marriage certificate from Aaliyah with him marrying Aaliyah. With Michael, there isn't that. So there's still room for doubt or to not think he did it. So I think it's probably is that. And also, even compared to R. Kelly or Diddy, anybody else, maybe with the exception of Bill Cosby, like Michael is American culture. Like
mm-hmm.
like baseball, apple pie, Michael Jackson. It's like you can't, like, if you erase Michael, it's like you erase Justin, Usher, and Beyonce, like the last nearly 50 years of popular culture almost,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in music. Like you can't divorce him in his impact from popular culture. And so I think it makes it very difficult for people to like let go of it, or to not, even if you believe he did it and you don't want anything to do with him, don't listen to his music, think he's a horrible person. It's like you can't to deny his influence on maybe some of your favorite artists would be disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that like you can, like, if you don't want to step in the name of love, you can kind of just push our character to the background. Similar kind of to Diddy to an extent, you can do that. But with Michael, that's very hard to do. So I think that's probably partly why.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
I definitely see your point.
yeah. But even with getting back to Jay, some people are saying that some people are saying that some reason some people are rooting for him to be next is because they hate Beyonce so much that they want to see her humble, basically by by him being brought down,
Her
essentially
being almost an
attached to him.
accomplice.
Yeah,
Yeah, not an
which
accomplice in the sense that she was helping, but more
right,
so
but
her hiding
almost
secrets too.
so like Nicki Minaj and her husband, in a sense, like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it would tarnish her legacy to be attached to a man who is been accused of similar behavior. Um, so which I think is true to an extent, but then you got other people who think just outside of Beyonce that he has done some things and they will come to the light. So, mm, I think if anybody would burn to the ground, it probably would be her. I mean, if she came, but what I mean by that is if she came out and said, actually, y'all, this is I've come to a revelation. This is actually what the relationship was, or if she alleges that he cheated again and or he was abusive, then it's a wrap.
Mm. Yeah, I agree, and I think that she definitely would take a hit if there is legit things like brought forward, especially if it was things like that happened at
After.
like after, yeah,
Mm.
like after like I would say anywhere from 2008 to where they like became like just this big brand. Cause like when like at first it was like because when did they actually marry each other? I can't
Oh
remember.
wait.
Oh eight, yeah. So yeah,
Mm.
oh eight. So potentially from like anything like that happening from like oh eight to like I would say after or like between like Lemonade or even post Lemonade, especially because then that was like the whole this is what really happened. And then when you got to the Carters, the Everything Is Love, it was like, yeah, y'all bitches broke, y'all ugly, y'all just
Nah,
mad because y'all ain't got nobody.
yeah, now
So
we now we
after
now we
that,
now we balling together.
right, now we ball together. Now if it's like anywhere between then and after, yeah, definitely the chicken's gonna come home to roost quickly because it's gonna be like, you put us through the ringer with like the elevator thing, and then like the lemonade, then the whole arc of that to you ain't leaving him. That's your man, your man, your man, and you was like near him doing diabolical shit. Not in the room or the venue or what have you, but you were guilty by association and you might have known. So
I
yeah.
guess that can go either way because you know I'm trying to think. Well, I was gonna compare it to Cosby and his wife, but she's not visible the way Beyonce is.
Oh yeah,
Um,
not
so
at all.
um,
I don't know what that woman looks like.
Camille, yeah,
Yeah.
Camille. Um,
Uh
yeah, maybe like well, his TV wife, Alicia Rashad. I mean, people can say, well, did she know or did she say anything? But but largely she's come away from that untarnished, which I think she should because I mean, how could she have known? She worked with the man, but she didn't know that man out
right.
there so outside of work. But
And she defend him anyway.
yeah, she did. But uh, have big
Right.
fun anyway. I guess if you compare it to somebody to like Mary with Diddy, it's like obviously she can't to her career, especially her early career, he's very much tied into that story. Um, but at the same time, it's like how much was she aware of anything, because he may have shown her one side of himself when they're working together, and then outside of that, maybe she may have heard whispers or rumors, but she may have chosen not to believe it because and thought
Oh, well
and thought
shit. She was an addict too. So they
well
probably were doing drugs together. you
well
know?
no well according to her she said she kept that from him. She said he even know the full extent of how bad it got, say around mid 90s. That was something that she really like hid away from him as far as like the sort of the drugs and the alcohol and the sort of toxic the abuse that she was going through with
Hmm.
uh in her relationship. So and also I'm not sure if he was doing drugs she was doing at that time. I think maybe but later on I don't know, but I guess what I'm saying is it's possible that she heard things or maybe things that she probably heard whispers within the industry or whatever, but she probably thought, well, that's not the person that I see when we work together. And also for a while they weren't working together because after the My Life album they sort of separated for a while,
Hmm.
share my world and marry, No More Drama. She didn't work with them until again to around like
Right.
'03. So which according to her reason for that was because he tried to make faith in her image and she didn't like that, which plausible. Uh, um, but in turn, I guess I'm reluctant to like lay the blame at the women's feet for what what Diddy did or what Jay-Z has done, if anything. Because it's the thing of like well she should have done this and she should have done that. It's like well no that nigga shouldn't have did what he did altogether. You know,
Hmm.
because people like in terms of Diddy, people are coming from like Mary and Naomi saying what they know. Do they say anything? They do anything? Well, they I don't want to be too quick to drag them into his mess until unless something comes out about it. Um, Even with Usher, I would if that's the case that he saw what was happening and do anything. Usher lived with Diddy back in the day when he was a teenager, you know, and you know, I hope nothing happened, but if something did happen, I would not be shocked.
Not at the very least.
Even if it was a case of like what he saw, because I mean, he alludes to seeing things. He's alluded to seeing things, but he couches it into like, you know, oh yeah, I saw, you know, yeah, like, and that sort of like, you know, I saw grown man things, and it made me feel grown. You know what I mean? That whole thing of like, you know, yeah, I saw sexual stuff, but it gave me swag in a sense to put it in it. But I wonder if it was beyond that, you know, which is possible.
Yes, that is the ugly side of it. But like, yeah, yeah, I'm quick to give the women grace, especially like Mary. Like Mary was having her own demons and did her own thing, and then like you said, but I say by '97 they weren't even really working together at all. You know, she moved on and did her own thing, and that was pretty much basically when he was cementing himself as a solo star. So you know, to each their own. But I think the thing about the Beyonce Jay thing is how much she doubles down on their relationship and makes it seem as if nothing can break them apart, even maybe that, you know. But I just couldn't see Beyonce on a sinking ship like that.
Oh no, if it gets too bad, she gone.
Yeah, I think she would have to do that. But also, so many people want to see her. There's also another side of that where people want to see her unattached from him. That they might want that to happen.
That's what I was saying before. That they want to see her humble by having like you know, you saying about this man and how he would and everything else, and how you know would fight behind him and do that in the third. But look at him. Look at what he's done. What to say about you? That's what I mean. Some people want that to happen, just to have the satisfaction of like, look at your man. He was all my man, my man, my man. Look at your man now. But they want it for that. They don't care about if it was actual abuse going on and how it affected people and how it impacted people's lives and things like that. They care about being able to cackle and talk about her. You know.
Right. So we will see, man. It's a very slippery slope going on between celebrities, fame, and the bullshit that they do. Uh, you know, if you don't want to go down, just don't do shit that's fucked up. You know, don't be out here sexually assaulting people. Don't be out here being an asshole and treating people like shit. And I'm not gonna play the whodunit game, you know, because I just don't get anything out of it. Because honestly, I tried to do that when the Me Too movement started, and my biggest thing was Steve Harvey, and that motherfucker ain't get taken down yet. So hey, you know, you live and you learn.
Yeah, taking out for that man unit. Cat Williams said,
right.
best life in America. He said a man unit. I was like, okay. Like, damn, I know that. Well, I learned something new today.
So yeah, we will see. So yeah, that is pretty much our edition of this episode. Anything else you want to add to?
Go ahead.
No, I was just asking. Anything else you want to talk about or add to?
To end some on like I guess a bit of a lighter note, the trailer for the Luther documentary has come out. Luther Vandross's documentary has come out. Came out
I'm excited to see
last
that
week. Yeah,
bro, I'd rather see that than a biopic.
Yeah, but with the approval of the estates, that that's which means they'll get to use the music.
Okay. I always say, is that a good thing or bad thing? Because sometimes
I mean, it can be a double-edged sword, because on the one hand you got access to music and the family's blessing, but also definitely in the case of Luther, will they talk about the elephant in the room, or will they not? Being in his sexuality, his private life, which I'm torn about, because on the one hand he never officially came out while he was alive, so in a sense, that was his private life to tell or not tell. But at the same time, to ignore it would be strange, because it would be strange. It just would. I mean, people knew, even though he didn't confirm. People knew, and so to not talk about it and to not talk about maybe how that affected him off stage and how that impacted him as an artist would be kind of weird not to do that at all, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's time, and you could do it tactfully.
Mm.
I don't think you have to be uh, scandalous to talk about, if not I don't want to say a battle, but
But
just the um,
just the push pull of like
right.
of either wanting to sort of keep your privacy just from a human level and not everybody in your business, but also the career calculation of like, because think about when he started his solo career early 80s, let's start in the early 80s, AIDS. So which also led to, AIDS hysteria and also, increased homophobia along with the religious right and everything else going on, conservative wise. So, and if you in that environment, you already got uphill battle as a black artist. I think by that point he was like in his early 30s trying to carve out a career. Like, well, how do I do this? Because what role models did he have other than maybe Little Richard and Sylvester? Which Little Richard had his own battle with his own internal struggles.
And I don't say much less people like Freddie Jackson.
Oh yeah, well, but Freddie came after, so
Did he come out? Because I know at one point on TV One when he had his unsung or something, he was like, "It's nobody's business."
Oh well, as far as like Freddie came out as an artist after Luther. So in terms of like,
okay.
Yeah, as far as Luther having somebody to look to, you had Sylvester, but Sylvester, didn't have the mainstream success that he was aiming for. Because Luther was like,
he was a household name.
Like the male Anita Baker, as far as like that middle class, smooth respectability, sort of like, R&B artist. And that's what Sylvester was. Sylvester was his own thing, So number one is that he didn't have a sort of roadmap to look to, and on top of that is like, if I say this, then is it going to be a scandal? Because by that point, even Elton John was saying still saying he was bi at that point in the early 80s. George Michael hadn't come out, that wouldn't be until the late 90s, so it had to be a hard decision of like, how do I sort of navigate this? And the way he did it was just to be like, I'm not gonna talk about it, and so I definitely think the documentary should talk about it, but also, it shouldn't be the main thing. It should be of course, the artistry and music. Because think about, he worked with Patty, he worked with Aretha, he worked with Mariah. I think he worked with Whitney. I think he worked with Whitney. But just like a producer, arranger, songwriter, he worked with David Bowie. Like, very talented auteur, basically. I think he was looked at as that because of his music was just not just, but his music was he wasn't like he wasn't making like dense conceptual albums. They were love songs, but he was the one. He was the machine. He was the one making it work. He was the one who had the flawless stage show and let you know if he was fucking up. And
it was the voice. The voice.
Oh yeah.
No dancing. No theatrics. It was. He really. He really wasn't supposed to be that big if you think about it. Like around that time period, it was like kind of shifting to being like,
it was to Michael, to the MTV,
very theatrical. Mm-hmm. And here you had this modest looking black man who just got by because he was very, very he played the game. He played the game well. He had a great voice. He had great music, and he was successful, highly successful. And I just looking at it, I'm like, damn, he really didn't have to do all the extra shit that some people had to do to stand out. He got to be himself. He even got to be fat. And I know that's touchy. I don't want to sound fat phobic, but typically when an artist gains weight or like they let themselves go, they kind of get like a backlash. And he got the jokes, but then it was like he still was the same star. It wasn't like uh his numbers fell or people did like, oh, I don't want to see Luther. Luther fat now. It was just,
Well, I think being a man helped in that
people even
regard.
made the jokes. Right. And
Yeah.
then the people started like it almost gave him like a character appeal. Like, I like Big Luther. Big Luther is better than Skinny Luther. It was a whole little joke that went with it. It almost gave him more personality than he was actually putting out. So yeah, Luther is definitely almost an anomaly how big he got. Like you talked about Sylvester, who didn't get their flowers like that. And then you say Freddie Jackson, who was kind of on the cusp of Luther, and he got like, he was known, but it was like he never got just as big as Luther because he was almost like Luther light.
Mm.
Um, and just I don't know, it was just an interesting time for him to come out when the industry was shifting,
Yeah,
and he was more so of a kind of like an older actor as far as like the way he presented himself.
he was
But
he was a balladeer in a era where things would become more dance driven and more image
right,
driven.
right, because there's this book by this author called Punch Me Up to the Gods. His mother was a Luther fan, and they didn't know what he looked like until he performed, I think maybe on a Saturday Night Live or some event, maybe the Grammys. And when they saw him, they were so disappointed because I think this was about the time he had gained weight, and they made jokes about his weight, and then they made jokes about his sexuality because they was like, he don't even look like he like women. And it was such a memorable part of the book because it was like, here you had this man who was famous, he had all this appeal, he even had women lusting after him, and he got reduced to his looks and then his the questions about his sexuality. So that is an important part. I hope they include in the documentary because it's moments like that that make you be like, damn, like that's mean and fucked up, but also Luther was so big that he was able to overcome ignorant moments like that.
They seem to talk about it as far as the weight that I saw as part of the trailer. They were saying, it was showing like how his weight would go up and down and how, journalists would ask him about it, so they seem like they're going to address that. I guess as far as how he was treated as far as the weight, I guess you could compare that to like Janet. Because if you watch Janet's documentary, she said before Control came out, they sent her to a fat farm. I think her and Paula, or her and a friend, I believe, to like lose weight. Even through like, and because her weight has, she's talking about her bowel weight and how she says she's an emotional eater, and even like during the Janet era where she like really like slimmed down and toned up, and she talked about how how the pressure to sort of like keep that up during that era, you know, um, and so you can even compare to someone like Luther, like Luther got obviously got flack for being heavy, but I think for like compared to how she was like viewed or treated, maybe when she would gain weight during between albums or something like that, people would like really like zero in on that and like really like talk about her in that sense.
Hmm, that's interesting. I definitely get it. Uh, so it's gonna be a good watch because I'm fascinated about Luther's career, just the success he had, like we talked about, just at that period, and
Mm.
able to carry it on so long until he, unfortunately passed away. Even his passing was so sudden.
Mm.
Um, just a very interesting star for that time period.
Yeah.
So there we have it, another episode of the Side Eye. We appreciate you all for sticking around, listening. We hope you all enjoy this episode. Please leave us feedback. Let us know what you enjoyed. Let us know what you didn't enjoy, and always continue to hang in there with us. Thank you. I'm Uptown Bobby,
And K Clark.
and we are out.